Anyway, the on which I feel confident in 1965, while working for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I was, through another member, a female member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, presented the topic of Zionism. This female member of SNCC happened to have come in contact while working in South America with Palestinian forces. I myself had no scientific understanding of Zionism, and started within the circle of SNCC quietly, unbeknown to certain elements. We had every month we read one book on Zionism. And since 1965 till today, at least, I read one book a month on concerning Zionism, or broaden it out, of course, the history of Judaism. I've attended many anti-Zionist international symposiums in Baghdad, in Tripoli. I've attended many meetings of the Palestine National Corporation, Palestine National Council, Palestine National Congress. And of course, I've had great working relationships with anti-Zionist forces within the Jewish community. In order for us to properly understand the topic, a clear delineation must be made between Judaism and Zionism. I understand that this creates certain problems in certain elements within the society. But even if one doesn't agree with my statement, at least one should understand the general outlines which allows me to arrive at the statements that I do. Of course, Judaism is a religion. And we know that religions, of course, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the Communist Manifesto said that religion is the opium of the masses of the people. Of course, this statement is correct in the particular instance of Europe. It is not correct, generally speaking. The error that is made by those who've been dominated by Europe is that the particular history of Europe usually becomes the general history of the world. And this certainly should not be done. We said in the particular instance where Marx and Engels both said that religion is the opium of the masses of the people, they were correct for Europe. If one would look properly at Europe, one would see that Europe has never produced any universal religion. All universal religions that have come to Europe have come from the outside: Judaism, Islam, Christianity. One would also note that the question of religious differences in Europe is dominantly intolerant. That is to say, they burn Jews at the stake, they burn Muslims at the stake, they burn Christians at the stake, they burn non-believers at the stake. Outside of Europe, certainly in Africa, which we may use as an example, the problem of religious intolerance, the problem of religious differences is not dominantly intolerant, but dominantly tolerant. That is not to say that in Africa one does not find religious conflict here and there, but it is not the normal way of life. Thus, this question is particular to Europe. The question of Zionism, too, will have a lot to do with the particular history of Europe, not with the particular history of areas outside of Europe, and particularly Africa. Of course, this question of Judaism as a religion is necessary for us to understand. As a revolutionary, I understand, unlike Mr. Marx and Mr. Engels, that religion is not the opium of the masses, but on the contrary, religion must be used as an arm by the revolutionary forces. Certainly, our history has demonstrated this. Just since we're speaking all the time of Martin Luther King is a clear example, but even if you go back through our history, you will find those who've been inspired to fight for the people, that their motivations come from religious inspiration. So, we then, as revolutionaries, do not consider religion to be the opium of the masses, not us. We say the position here is entirely different in Africa. The religion of Judaism and Zionism must be, the religion of Judaism and the political philosophy of Zionism must be completely separated. Judaism is a religion. As an African, I'm very proud of this religion because it was given to the world by my people. Judaism began in Africa. We must be clear here. Of course, forces seeking everywhere to store up nonsense will make it appear as if Africa didn't give Judaism to the world, but others came from the outside and gave it to Africa. This is nonsense, bourgeois lies, and racist manipulation against Africa. Africa gave monotheism to the world, belief in one God. And at the time that Africa gave monotheism to the world, belief in one God, every other area surrounding Africa were believing in cows, were believing in moons, were believing in the sun. It was Africa and Africa alone that gave monotheism to the world. That is why Judaism had to be born in Africa. It presented the proper conditions for Judaism to be born there. Sigmund Freud in his book, Moses and Monotheism, his last book, and the book usually hidden, it's hard to get, and I don't see why. I find the book to be a particularly interesting book, and the conditions under which it were written. Mr. Freud began to write the book, I believe, in Austria, and because of Nazi occupation, he had to leave, and he took all the notes with him and went to Britain and hurried very much to write the book. Of course, this book, the Moses and Monotheism, here Freud comes to show through archaeological proofs, Freud comes to show through historical proof, Freud comes to throw through psychoanalytical proof that Judaism began in Africa, and not only this, but Moses himself was an African. Of course, the early priests of the religion were Africans, as they had to be. They were the ones who recorded the religion. Thus, when I take a position against Zionism, for example, when I hear people tell me that I'm anti-Semitic, which makes no sense at all because Judaism has nothing to do with Semitic people. One is a religion, the other is a biological specification, and the Palestinians certainly are Semitic. Mr. Arafat is a Semite. So if I support the Palestinians, I cannot be anti-Semitic, that's clear. But this is all confusion here. And this confusion is well done to keep people more confused. But we're revolutionaries, and we believe in dialectics. Out of confusion comes clarity. Because our time is limited and we want a lot of time for question, we want to make it clear. Judaism was given to the world by Africa. This is clear and undeniable fact. Those who wish to look at the history and we can develop it, look. Zionism is a political philosophy. It did not come out of Africa. The first organizational conference of Zionism, if my memory serves me correctly, was in 1897 in a place called Bâle, Switzerland. B-A-L-S-E. The reason why this meeting had to be held in Bâle, Switzerland was because the majority of Orthodox Jewry in Europe was against Zionism, totally against it. We must look properly at Zionism, its beginning, and its founder, a man by the name of Theodor Herzl, H-E-R-Z-L. Mr. Herzl was, of course, bourgeois from his toes to his top of his head. He was bourgeois. As bourgeois as you can get. He didn't think about the proletarian. As a matter of fact, Mr. Herzl himself was not a religious person. It's extremely important. And we want to read his diary. He himself says that he's an atheist. You must understand the word properly. An atheist does not just not believe in God. An atheist makes the affirmative statement that God does not exist. Thus, Mr. Herzl is an atheist. I could never understand, until this day it is incomprehensible for me to understand. How is it that Zionism, a political philosophy, born thousands of miles away from Judaism, one born in Africa, the other in Europe, born thousands of years different from Africa, thousands of years of difference, Judaism thousands of years ago, Zionism 1897, and how is it that they can link each other together? And according to the philosophy of Zionism, that they feel that somehow that they have some relationship to Judaism and this promised state that God promised his chosen people. Mr. Herzl did not believe in God. Not only did not believe in God, he said that God did not exist. Now, he who tells me that God does not exist sets out to find a place that God promised to his chosen people. If this is not ludicrous, and this is the basis, of course, of Zionism, so you can see here the contradictions just everywhere. According to Mr. Herzl, Jews, and the theory that he said is that Jews were discriminated against all over the world. This is not true. In Europe, yes, but not all over the world. We must never make the particular history of Europe, the general history of the world. There's no question that Judaism had trouble in Europe, but we said all religions had trouble in Europe, so that's nothing new for Europe. These are historical facts. Consequently, we must not confuse it. But Mr. Herzl and those who are Zionists say that there's a hatred for Jews which is innate in human beings. This is unscientific garbage. How can anyone tell us, which preaches a religion, that someone cannot be transformed to a higher state when religion is about transforming human beings to a higher qualified state? They come to make an unscientific statement. Not only does Mr. Herzl say that people have an innate hatred for Judaism, but he says this innate hatred, which we who are non-Jews have, will continue forever. Even making an unscientific statement that nothing changes. Everything changes all the time.